This is me on my university campus weeks before the whole COVID situation happened. And if I had known these were my last days on campus, I would have checked off few more things from my list. So in this video, I would like to share 5 key takeaways from my life at university and frameworks which you can use yourselves if you are already in a university or about to join one. The first one is to be smart about your work. Now, we have all heard the phrase that smart work beats hard work, but I want to be very specific here. I want to talk about something that's called the Pareto's principle, which you might have already heard, but I'll read it off from Wikipedia. For many outcomes, roughly 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. A good reductive example of Pareto's principle would be that you can get about 70 to 80% of the result by putting in 20 to 30% of the effort. And to get the remaining 20% or 30% of the result, you have to put the remaining 70 to 80% of the effort. Let's look at some examples, right? There's an exam coming in maybe few hours, in few days or a week, which you have not prepared at all for. So if you're low on time to prepare for the exam, what you can do is just solve previous year question papers. That'll give you an idea of what kind of questions you can expect. Now, you would not be able to solve those questions paper directly if you haven't already prepared for those, but that's fine. You can just ask your friends, you can consult books, slides, your friends' notes to solve those questions and get some idea. This will help you fetch some good marks instead of you covering the whole syllabus from scratch. You can just get the 70 to 80% of the result by focusing on 20% of the crux of the syllabus by solving these previous year question papers. So the first framework would be to use the Pareto principle wherever you can, to look for what is the crux of the problem, the 20% that you can solve for to get the 80% of the result. This also applies to deciding which classes you want to attend to. Not all the classes that you will have in your university would be useful equally. There would be classes that aren't that helpful. For example, in my first semester, there was this course called Engineering Graphics, which had 2 components, lab and lectures. And the lectures for this engineering graphics course were not very useful. They would show you GUI on how to operate the software to create the 3D models that you would anyway do in the laboratory. And if you want to understand how to use that software, you could just go through the slides from the lecture. So you don't actually have to go to the lectures, you can save that time. So this is how you can minimize the effort but maximize the outcome, the result you get from that. Second takeaway would be to not make a decision in hurry. During your university years, there would be times where you would have to make important decisions, like whether you should join or not join a club, whether you should leave that club or department that is taking too much toll on your physical or mental health, whether you should be in a relationship or call it quits, whether you should take that internship that your on-campus senior has offered to you, whether you should take that freelance gig or not. You should have a good night's sleep before taking important decisions. This will help you reduce that regret. I'll talk about the framework for this particular takeaway, but here are some questions you can ask yourself. Create a Google Doc maybe and ask these questions to yourselves before you take that decision. The first question would be, if the current situation goes on as is, will it end up taxing you more physically or emotionally? Second question you can ask is, what will be the pros and cons of you not doing anything about it and letting time run its course? Because a lot of things get resolved with time. Another question that you should ask is whether you are taking this decision because of an emotion that you are feeling, whether it could be anger, it could be hate, it could be jealousy, or anything else, right? You just have to think about that emotion and what triggered it. That will help you take a better decision. About the frameworks, the framework that you can use in such decision-making situations is the famous Jeff Bezos regret minimization framework. So it's quite simple actually. What you do is you project yourself X years into the future, right? And X could be different values. It could be 5, 10, 20, 80 years for you or your decision, right? But what you need to do is project yourself X years in the future and think if you would regret not taking that decision. And if the answer is yes, you will regret not doing this, then you should do it. Otherwise, don't bother about it. Let it go. The third takeaway would be to get some work experience. This is one of the most important takeaways that I realized very late, is that you should get some work experience. Now, I was lucky because the university curriculum contains two different internship stints that we have to do. But what you should do is look for other opportunities as well. Always keep looking the emails that you get in your university email inbox. You will see opportunities like internship, a freelancing job from your senior, or a startup that your batchmate has created, thesis or research opportunities, and a lot of stuff that you will see. Just all you need to do is just always keep track of what is going on around you and apply for those. In relation to this getting work experience, I just want to tell that there are some red flags that you should definitely look for when joining as an intern or even as a freelancer in a startup. And the founder asks you to sign an NDA. Chances are the founder is not very sure about the idea himself and they don't have a lot of experiences. But these NDAs could be very restrictive for you, and they would ask you to not share what you have worked on in your resume. In some cases, this might be true. They might have critical data that they don't want you to share about, talk about. But more often than not, that startup or that founder is not going to be worth it. Think of these work experience as kind of a ladder. You start from the bottom rung and then you can move slowly up. So don't get stuck and don't get demotivated if you can't find a good internship. You can start from the bottom and still go to the top. Don't worry about it. I myself started like freelancing and then went to internships and then finally got a job. So always keep looking for what you love. Start from a not so good internship and you can still move up, and you can also change the domain of whatever thing you're working on. Chances are you might not like what you're working on and realize that your real passion lies somewhere else. For me, I started with 2D animation and realized that okay, I would like to do 3D animation, and then from 3D animation I jumped to game development, and from game development to web development. That is alright. You can switch domains to find where your real passion lies or whatever you like to work on. If you want to do freelancing, if you want to do gigs, feel free to do that. So I wouldn't suggest you to look for freelancing as a long-term job, but think of it as getting a variety of experience. It's good to have that. So here is a framework that you can use to choose whether an opportunity is good for you or not. If you are just starting out to get some work experience, don't bother much whether it's a good opportunity or not. But if it's a relatively big commitment, you should set your priorities correct. For me personally, the priority is in this order. Number first is the people you would be working with. It's very important that you work with people with high integrity, because what you want is some sort of mentorship from them. You want to have people who have good access and network, and you want to work with people who are actually passionate about their work and they don't care about the titles of CEO or CTO or anything. The second priority would be your job or what you would actually be working on, and if you are passionate about that or not. The second thing that will come is your job or the actual stuff that you would be working on, and if you're not interested in it, then there's no point joining there. Third thing is the idea that the people are working on. If you don't have a passion for what they're working on, they could be working on an AR VR startup, they could be working on a data startup. You should have some passion for that idea. That would go a long way. In the description, I will link to a tweet from Alex Cohen, who is a famous investor, and he talks about this framework on deciding the priorities that you should look for when joining a new company, a new work, or a new startup. The fourth thing would be to don't self-reject. If there is one thing I would want you to take away from this video, it would be this: don't self-reject yourself. It is not your job to do. Let other people do that for you, because otherwise you won't learn. It could be an internship that you want to do at a reputed startup or a firm. It could be a research opportunity that you want. It could be a girl you want to ask out. But the thing is that you don't self-reject, because it is not your job to do. Let's take a specific example. You want to apply to that impossible job or internship position, right? So what you would do is you would see the requirements, which would be like this year of experiences, or this much GPA, or experience with these sort of courses, and then you would self-reject. But the thing is, most of these requirements are actually wish list, and you don't actually have to have all of these. You don't have to self-reject, just go and apply. And I have seen this myself when I applied to DeepMind, and I got the interview, and I didn't think I would hear back from them, but I did. So don't self-reject, and if you want to ask someone out, just do it. There's a chance that you will get rejected, but that is fine. It's good to have that clarity sooner rather than later, because now you can focus on more important things and you can take that rejection gracefully. Framework that I would like you to have from this is to make many cheap mistakes. All of these frameworks are actually not mine. I've collected these gems from different people, different resources. This particular framework is make many cheap mistakes. And what it means is that you have to make many mistakes, but you have to make sure that the damage caused by that mistake or the cost of rollback is cheap. That is what a cheap mistake is, and you should make a lot of cheap mistakes. So asking someone out is a cheap mistake, because in the worst case they would be not interested in you, and you can take that rejection gracefully. But driving a car without a seat belt is not a cheap mistake, because the cost of rollback, that's not cheap, man. So yeah, the last important takeaway would be to take more photos and videos and enjoy your time. When people say your graduation years and your time at university would be the most amazing time of your life, they are not lying. It is going to be one of the most amazing experiences that you have ever had. You would spend nights playing CSGO with your friends and then having breakfast in the morning and then sleeping throughout the day. You would have those nights. You would be planning trips before the examination next. You would form bonds with these people and dance with them on stupid songs. You would do the most stupid stuff, but in retrospect, these would be your most cherished memories from these years. I was the person who would always say not to take pictures and live in the moment, but that has changed for me in the lockdown. And I've realized that it is important to capture those moments, because then you can go back in time. You can just open Google Photos, you can scroll down to that time and realize how your life was at that time and how much you enjoyed with those people, what pranks you did, what stuff you did, what stuff you planned, games you played, and everything. It's awesome. You should definitely take more photos and videos. Finally, I want to tell you that university life is going to be kind of like a sine curve, where there would be highs where you would be super happy, and there would be lows when you would feel bummed out. You would see people around you getting into internships at your favorite firms and startups. You would see people around you getting research opportunities at universities that you would want to have. One thing you should definitely know is, in the end, it always works out for everyone. So you have to have that faith in yourself. And I've seen people on the whole spectrum, from toppers to people like me, and in the end it always works out. So have that faith in you. And finally, I would want to make a deal with you guys, is that you subscribe to this video, and the next time you see a video from this channel in your YouTube feed, that could be a week or a month or a year later, and you realize that video is shitty, so what you do is you leave a mean comment on that video and unsubscribe, and I would appreciate it. So yeah, subscribe if you want. All right, see you. Bye.